Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome into DVD. D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick. Willie Donick and Derek Mason here with you. Adam Fingan is off today. David Janes is behind the glass as we continue our week of fun. So let's get right to the start of what is riding on today's show. It is Derek Mason's birthday today.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday, D. Mace.
Hey, thanks
Happy
a lot.
birthday, D-Mace.
Hey, appreciate it.
But that's not even the biggest story. It's going to put him in the spotlight because it's his birthday, but we've got until 2 o'clock.
Yes.
Actually, till about 1:45 for a very big take it to the bank guess that, or, pick that D-Mace made last week that is riding on between now and the end of the show. Now, David Janes is the commissioner and the scorekeeper of the very controversial, I shouldn't say controversial, it's fun, it's wacky, the Take It to the Bank, brought to you by FM Bank. We make our picks every Friday at 1:45. One of D-Mace's picks is that the Titans will hire a GM before Friday is up. And so we're giving him until we make our picks. Now, Commish, what is the cutoff time? Is it like 1:55 or is it like 1:44 before we start the segment?
No,
What do we got?
1:44.
So
Let's decide now.
I think that because he said by the end of the show,
Yes.
I think by 1:58. I do think it's 1:58. I
Yeah.
think
1:58.
Yes.
1:58. If it
Okay.
at 1:59, it doesn't count. But at
Okay.
1:58,
What if can it be until the start of Stillman's show?
See, look at him trying to stretch his lobby. Just because it's your birthday, don't try to get 5 extra minutes.
No, listen, I love you, D-Mace. I know it's your birthday. I ain't doing that.
Now, I heard you guys discussing this earlier this week
Uh-huh.
when Jake was helping us out, and he brought up a good point. He said, would the Titans ever
Mhm.
have this big news story hit right when Jared comes on? I think they would almost go out of their way
Yes, they would
not
do that.
have that happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure they don't really care one way or the other, but we are kind of wondering,
Yeah.
now that they've completed the interview process, are we going to hear some news today? Like, it could happen every time, right? They have concluded their
Mhm.
interviews, right, with the candidates, it appears.
Yeah, and it seems like, this is a one-man race. And it seems like, and if indeed that is indeed the case, then hopefully they can get this process done and over with. See, people, y'all think I want them to get this process done and over with because, hey, they need to get the franchise started right now, get everything going. No. I want them to get the process over and done with so I can win my bet, okay? That's what I need, them points, man.
You don't care who it is.
I don't care who it is, but I just need those points.
They could hire your dog.
Exactly. You can hire whoever you want to, just as long
Your pet
as
rock.
it's before 150 on or before 158. But
The suit is nominated 159.59.
Oh,
I mean,
see,
just-
the
but,
suit overrides everything
that's the
right
thing.
there.
This is the heat of being the commissioner. You sit in the
Uh-huh.
big chair, David. You've got to make your call and stick with it.
Final
That's
decision is 1:58.
158. Okay.
Yes.
So 157.50 or 157.59 would be sufficient.
Hmm.
But once it hits 158, nope, doesn't happen.
Listen, man, I might have to send the big fella down here, man. Either we can do it the easy way or we can do it the hard way.
Either the easy way or the not so easy way.
Okay, so
Uh,
this is something that has been speculated by a lot of the people that are following this closely,
Mhm.
and Tehran would be the one that I would put at the top of the list. Jared has also, I think, said this as much on his show. He thinks that they have a guy that, they've interviewed a ton of people.
Yes.
Like, it's hard. Like, you sent the list last night of all the people they've interviewed once,
mhm.
and then the list of people they brought back for a second interview. It's a long list of
Yes.
people. It's a wide range. But from the start, people have suspected there's one person that Chad Brinker really wants. That's at least one theory that's out there.
Mhm.
And honestly, I'm not the right person to ask whether this is the right move or the wrong move, because all of these people, you can read their credentials and say,
Mhm.
okay, that makes sense. This person's done this, this, and this. They've had success over here. But it does appear that John Eric Sullivan is the guy that some are speculating
Mhm.
has had the inside track and has been the guy that Brinker has eyed from the start. You buy that?
Listen, there's a high possibility that that may be the case. Obviously, the familiarity with one another, them both being in Green Bay, and listen, yes, it does seem like a sham sort of, process. Yes, it seems like they've already had pretty much their ducks in a row on how this structure was going to go and who was going to be leading the structure. Yes, I understand all that, and it does look bad on the franchise on how everything sort of transpired, through this timeline of fire and ran and everything else. But if you believe this is the best man for the job, then hire him and let's go. If you feel that you can replicate whatever they were doing, and Jared was right. It's like 1 minute you want to be New England, the next minute you want to be San Francisco. Then you talk about Detroit and how Houston built their team, and now you want to go to the Green Bay Packers. Listen, one thing is sure, you are picking some damn good franchises to sort of try to model yourself after. I get that. Detroit has become a good franchise over the years. It took 50 damn years, but they've done it. Well, it took 47, but they done it. But they got it done. So
under the same ownership, right?
Yeah, under
for
the
a long
same
time, the
ownership,
ownership
the
is like they
Fords,
don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
And
now they know what they're doing.
They're in a groove right now. They're in a window.
Exactly. So I understand, from that standpoint, you trying to figure out your own identity. If indeed you want to choose to go now this sort of Green Bay model, I'm not going to be mad at you, because since I follow football, Green Bay has been one of the dominant franchises out there. They've shown it's a model of consistency. Listen, they may have things that go on within the organization, but for the most part, this is the organization you look to and you say, okay, that's a good organization. They don't have a lot of these things going on. It doesn't seem like one guy's on one page and the other guy's on the next. They seem like a model franchise. So if indeed this is the road you're going to go down, I get it. I understand. Just find your identity within that, because if it doesn't work, then what? Then you're going to switch to, we want Baltimore's philosophy.
Yeah.
No, find your Baltimore, New York, those franchises, that have been really good for decades. Pittsburgh, they didn't go and say, let me be like this team. Let me be like this team. No, they built their own model, and their model they have been able to sustain that model, whoever's been the coach. So whatever model you choose to, try to implement, please put your flavor in it, okay? Because if it don't work, you're going to be switching to something else.
I think that is a really good adage to follow, because I think we can go back through and let's just take, for example, the Bill Belichick tree or the Mike Krzyzewski family tree. I mean, there's a lot of franchises or programs that have said, hey, let's hire the assistant coach from this system over here and bring that system over here. And I think history has shown that works sometimes, but it doesn't work a lot of times. And I think you've hit on the key reason why. You have to have your own stamp. You're bringing successful philosophies over into your building, but that alone isn't going to just guarantee success.
Exactly.
Right? We can read off some Belichick assistants that have done well,
just what I was
about to bring have not done
exactly.
well. It's some that haven't done well at all, really.
And it's like, I understand you, and you brought up the perfect example. It's like, I understand you wanting to model, in a sense, take some things that Bill Belichick did while he was head coach, and you want to implement them into what you are going to choose to be, or how you're going to choose to be as a head coach. But it has to be the bulk of you. Whoever you're going to be, it has to be authentically you, with a little bit of, maybe I got a little bit from Bill Belichick. Maybe I got a little bit from this coach over here and that coach. But the sum of it is me.
Right. It can't just be copy and paste.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'm afraid that's what the Titans may end up trying to do. Copy and paste. They tried to copy and paste the New England way. It worked for a minute, but then it soured.
Right. Let's take Green Bay, because I got into this conversation with Tehran on Monday when you were out, and we talked about Green Bay. And Green Bay, yes, I would agree with everything that you've said,
Mhm.
that they have consistency. They've had a really good track record of
Mhm.
success. But one thing that they have always had is what? For basically 30 years,
Mhm.
the number of times they have had to go out and try to find the quarterback is zero, right?
Yes.
Since Brett Favre came into being, and he was a guy that was languishing on the Falcons bench famously, and then boom, here he comes. He's the quarterback for a long time. They draft Aaron Rodgers. They wait. And then here's Aaron Rodgers. Now, Tehran's point is a good one. Hey, give them credit. They had the guts to take Aaron Rodgers, even though they had Brett Favre.
Yeah.
And they did the same thing with Jordan Love. Looks like it's going to work out
Mhm.
pretty well. Jordan Love looks good. Now they've invested heavily in Jordan Love.
Mhm.
I don't know if he'll be Rodgers or Favre, but he looks like a good
He's like
quarterback.
a good quarterback.
And they had the guts to draft him in the first round,
Mhm.
even though they had Rodgers, and they paid a price because Rodgers got all sideways and everything like that. But I do think everything else is easier to find
Mhm.
when you know you're not spending any time, energy, resources, cap space
Mhm.
on the quarterback.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why you can't just say, let's be like the Packers.
Yeah.
Because the Titans aren't like the Packers. You know why? They are at square one
Yeah.
of the quarterback situation. They have we went through 6 guys yesterday. That's just if they decide to go that route.
Exactly.
There's draft the quarterback. All of these things. Packers haven't had to do that in a while.
Well, it goes back to, yeah, you can try to emulate these franchises, but what you don't understand is and what you, it's sort of like what you have to tell young people nowadays, like when they see something on social media and they think instantly like, I want that, like I should be, and they think automatically they should be able to have that. It's like, no, they're just giving you what it looks like today. They're not telling you what they had to go through like 10, 15 years to even get to this point. And they're probably not even where they want to be. But it took them years. You're just seeing some of the, the final product of it. That's like the type, just like, yeah, you want to be like Green Bay, but Green Bay's got 30 years ahead of you right now, 30, 40 years head start in front of you. So that's why you can't say, I want to be like Green Bay, cut and paste like Green Bay, because Green Bay has been doing this. Pittsburgh has been doing this. New England had been doing it for 20, 30 years. So you can't all of a sudden pick up and say, I want to be like that team. No, find your identity. Take some things that may have worked, but find your identity, because if you don't find your identity, you're going to continue to be looking to how do we build a winning culture? How do we build a championship team?
I'll give you another example from my experience. When I came to Vanderbilt, I was signed by CM Newton. He left to become the athletic director at Kentucky, hired a guy named Rick Pitino. At the time, Kentucky was on probation. So I'm a senior in high school going, hey, this is interesting. My coach is gone. Who's my coach? They hired Eddie Fogler, assistant for a long, long time. Played for Dean Smith at North Carolina, assistant coach for a long time, and then he went to Wichita State to be a head coach. Comes to Vanderbilt, and he put in the famous Dean Smith system, right? The system that was talked about a lot. So what you find out, like we had all of the principles, so many principles that were exactly identical to how we could watch North Carolina play, and North Carolina had the same plays, the same signals. We're like, man, I know exactly what they're going to do. But you quickly find out, and Eddie Fogler did, they don't have Michael Jordan at Vanderbilt. They don't have James Worthy, Sam Perkins, and all these guys, high school All-Americans, all these guys. He had to do it a different way. He had to adapt to what he had at Vanderbilt, and he was successful. He was a national coach of the year, won a lot of games. So I think that's the key here. Whoever they hire, and if they are going to go this route of we're going to kind of follow the Green Bay model, that's good. But your point is a key point. Have to have your own stamp. You have to adapt. And with the challenges that they have with the roster, they're not going to be able to do it exactly how Green Bay did it. They could use some principles that were successful in Green Bay, but those are two different things. I think that's important to know.
Yeah, they are. So when you try to go in and, emulate a team, you got to understand, where are we as a team before we try to all of a sudden try to emulate all of these principles that Green Bay has spent decades building. Yeah, you can format them and put them on a spreadsheet and give them to everybody in the building, but it's going to take time for whatever you're trying to emulate Green Bay doing. It's going to take time for you to get there. And the point exactly, like, listen, you don't have a quarterback. So that's the first thing you need to try to find. You got to try to find a quarterback for this team that's going to lead this team into that new stadium. If you don't find that quarterback, you can't beat Green Bay. You just can't. You're going to have it's going to take you some years to build that up. So listen, again, I go back to whoever you choose to pick. If it's Sullivan, great. I just care about the franchise getting back on the winning track. I want them to have an identity again. This franchise has lost their identity. I can say there's been one or two times. This is the second time that I believe they've lost their identity. I think the first time is when Wisenhunt was here. I thought they lost their identity as a franchise. And then now I think, like, you've lost it. Like, what do you hang your hat on? The last 2 years, you have no identity.
And I think, too, Brian Callahan probably learned some things that he can't just take everything that happened in Cincinnati and bring it over here. He's going to have to adapt because it is different. You try to take what you've learned and have that be valuable to you. I want to touch on one thing before we end our first segment. We've got Elliot Friedman coming on. Let's give you a little idea of what we're doing today on this Friday. Elliot Friedman usually joins us on Thursday. He's going to join us today at 11:30. So we're going to talk to him. We'll talk Ryan O'Reilly. We'll talk about the Predators' victory last night. It was a good win against Chicago, dramatic fashion, big historic week. We'll also check the pulse of Elliot, who is a huge Vikings fan after their collapse the other day. But some good hockey topics with him. We'll have Ask D-Mace at 12:30. Big weekend. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson. I can't wait to hear D-Mace's take on that, because what a game that's going to be. That is a death match, right? The loser is going to be like, oh, man, what a tough season. These are two teams that are absolutely good enough to win the Super Bowl, and one's got to beat the other before they even think about trying to get to Kansas City, assuming Kansas City wins their game. So a big weekend of pro football is coming up. We're going to tackle that. We're scheduled to have Jonathan Hutton on a little bit later in the show, and we will take it to the bank as well. But I want to hit a quick story that Tehran put out here very recently. Titans offensive assistant Peyton McCullum was selected to be a quarterback's coach at the East-West Shrine game later this month. Now, why is that significant? McCullum will work with the West team quarterbacks. And who's on the West team playing quarterback? Shedeur Sanders. What's the significance of that in your mind?
I think they get an opportunity to, get a up close and personal look at Shedeur, and not just, from, the play on the field, how he conducts himself in the meeting room, how he conducts himself throughout the building, that whole week. Is he showing leadership? They get to see now truly, who sort of Shedeur Sanders is outside. And I'm sure they know a lot of stuff. These guys, listen, they do background checks beyond background checks. But to get an opportunity to sit and see how he learns the game and see how he views the game in the meeting, and then how he takes that and translates it on the field. That's going to be key, because if you're going to draft somebody, you got to know all of these things about them, and then you get more time to spend with them during the draft process. So you're getting a leg up on some people, because you're actually in the room, and then you get more time to spend with them during the draft process.
So this will be the process is the key word. We have so much to discuss between now and the time they actually decide what to do with this pick. I'm still in the camp of, I like much more the idea of trading down, but we'll get into that. Ask D-Mace will be happening at 12:30. We'll get into a lot of these things. There's some other tidbits happening in football that we're going to get to during that segment. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning studio, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where Buzz is always about great service, just getting started. We'll talk to Elliot Friedman here in a moment. Stay tuned. You're listening to DVD here on 102.5 The Game. All right, we're going to take it to the bank at 145. Don't forget to open the door to great opportunities and financial freedom through F&M Bank. Yes, they sponsor our Take It to the Bank segment at 145. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Tick, 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 tick. Are the Titans going to hire a GM? Derek Mason needs to know if he's going to get points in our competition. But here's the point. F&M Bank is all about banking made easy on purpose. Their team of dedicated financial experts is committed to guiding you every step of the way with your financial needs. F&M Bank aims to provide a seamless process completely tailored to your unique needs. Your business means everything to them. So get in touch with F&M Bank's friendly team today at the nearest location. Discover how they can empower your financial goals. Visit them online at one of their 20 locations in Middle Tennessee and even in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. To get started, myfmbank.com is the website. That's myfmbank.com. Equal housing lender. Remember, FDIC. We take it to the bank at 145. DVD continues here on 102.5 The Game. Our phone and text line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick and Derek Mason here with you today. We're about to be joined by Elliot Friedman, and we're excited about that. He normally joins us on Thursdays, had to push to today, so we'll join him in just a moment. But last night, D-Mace, the Predators got their second consecutive victory. This is a very important 5-game homestand, and it started with a loss to Washington, division leader. Nashville badly outplayed the Capitals, but their goalie, quite honestly, Logan Thompson outplayed UC Saros in that game. And Washington, in my mind, kind of stole the game. Nashville came back, beat Vegas, a very, very good team, another one of the top teams in the league. And then last night was an interesting game. On paper, they should wipe the floor with the Chicago Blackhawks. And I'm thinking, okay, let's see if they can pick up where they left off against Vegas. And they didn't. They were very sloppy, choppy the first 2 periods, found themselves behind going into the third against a team that, if they play like they've been playing, they should beat handily.
But Willie, I'm glad you brought that up, because I thought, even though they were able to hold on the night before, the game before, I still felt like that third period, it was like they lost some of the energy. It was like they slowed that, some of that energy they had lost. They had slowed. It's like they had played 2 really good, physical, fast periods. And then that third period, it was like they were holding on. And maybe just that sort of lingered into the next following game. And then they had to sort of pick it up and ultimately, take that game in overtime. But I just felt that, the start of the game was indicative on, even though they held on, it was indicative of the game before.
That's a fair theory. I also think there was a little bit of, you look at Chicago's lineup right now, it doesn't scare you. And we'll just show up and blow them away. And it was anything but that. They did rally. A huge goal by Philip Forsberg on a spectacular shot, tied it up, and then they go to a shootout, and Nashville goes 3 for 3 in the shootout. That was pretty cool, especially with what was going on. Number one, it's the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Number two, they were celebrating basically the Predators' new team Hall of Fame. Like the Titans announced recently, Mike Keith will immediately go into the Ring of Honor. You remember the big ceremony for the Ring of Honor, Frank Wycheck, Steve McNair, Eddie George. And so basically the Predators' first 3, David Poile, Shea Weber, and Pekka Rinne. That's the Eddie George, Steve McNair, Frank Wycheck for the franchise. So there was a lot of nostalgia in the building. It would have been a big buzzkill to come up short in that.
Oh, of course.
And it wasn't the prettiest win, but it was a dramatic win, so everybody went home happy.
Yeah, everybody did. They darn near doubled, the Blackhawks in shots. So if you just look at, the numbers, you would have thought, like you said, this game they should have been able to sort of have command over this game a lot earlier, but that wasn't the case. They end up having to fight back. Chicago scores 2 goals in the second period. The Preds have to come back in the third period to tie it up and send the game into overtime, and then ultimately they win it in overtime. But if you just look at the numbers, I mean, you would have thought it wouldn't have been a game that went into overtime.
Yes, and to their credit, they did play, I thought, really well in the third period. Let's see if they can carry that over. They've got another grudge match, this one against Minnesota on Saturday night. But they are going into a set of games. They've got 10 before the end of the of play, before the long break for the Four Nations Face-Off tournament. And the schedule is a little bit lighter. They've got Minnesota, who's a very good team, on Saturday. Then they've got a home and home with San Jose. Now, you tell me, schedule makers. Nashville, San Jose, home and home? I'm not sure. But they've got Anaheim twice in there as well. They've got another matchup with Chicago, 2 with Buffalo as well. So for the first time in a while, I think the schedule is a little lighter than it was in the previous 15 or so. We've got Elliot Friedman on the line from Hockey Night in Canada and the 32 Thoughts. First of all, Elliot, let's get a vibe check here. D-Mace knows you're a big Vikings fan. We talked about the Vikings on Tuesday. What a tough – that had to be tough for somebody like you who follows them close. 14 wins.
You know what? Someone said to me that's got to be like one of the toughest defeats you've ever seen. I said, I don't even know if it's in the top 3. It's like this. This has been a terrible week because that loss, and because I mentioned on the pod I'm a Vikings fan, like all of our great listeners were tweeting at me, tough one tonight. Like they were just burying me. And then, I think I'm getting away from it. Okay, people are moving on. They're starting to look ahead to this week's games. And yesterday was the anniversary of what I do believe is the worst Vikings loss in my lifetime. Which, remember when the Broncos won their second straight Super Bowl, beating the Falcons? That year, the Vikings were 15-1. It was Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, and Robert Smith, and of course Randy Moss. Nobody could stop them. And they lost the NFC Championship game at home in overtime. And there's actually a picture, and people were sending it to me yesterday. So Gary Anderson had made, I don't know, he hadn't missed a kick all year.
Right.
And he was on an incredible streak, including playoffs. And right before he lines up the kick, they put this font on the screen. And of course, he misses and they lose in overtime. So that was the worst one. And like, it was funny. Another buddy of mine who was a Vikings fan, he said to me when just before they started the game, and they were, talking about everything that happened in Los Angeles, and they were talking about how much the Rams were playing for LA and those special things that they were doing. He was watching the screen. He's texting me. He says, look, I'm watching this. We've got no chance. We're getting killed tonight. And he was totally right. It was pretty funny, actually.
It is that tough feeling that you have when you've had such a great, really overachieving regular season. And
Yeah.
I think the Predator fans can probably relate. The Titans fans, they were 1 seed 3 years ago. D-Mace can relate. He played on a couple of really good Titans teams that had that pain of losing in the playoffs earlier than you think you should, but it's just it's how sports works. So let's get to a couple of things. I texted you earlier this week, Elliot. It's been a nostalgic week for the Predators. Last night they opened up their team Hall of Fame. Their first 3 inductees: David Poile, Shea Weber, Pekka Rinne, and they win a dramatic game against the Blackhawks. They didn't play very well the first couple of periods, and then they turned it on and pulled it out. And then, of course, 2 nights ago, they got win number 1,000 for the franchise. And Andrew Burnett, the head coach, first goal in the first win in franchise history, and then coaches game number 1,000. That's a pretty unique distinction there.
I got your note on that, Willie, and we are looking into it to see if there's any comparable. We have sent the outstanding nerds at the Sportsnet stats department on it to see if there's anything comparable, and they're unbelievable at what they do. So if there's anything there, they'll find it. First of all, I love that Hall of Fame thing you did. Like the Dallas Stars started one a few years ago. Basically, it's to honor players who don't have their numbers retired. So, guys like Brendan Morrow, Marty Turco, Darian Hatcher, who was the captain of their Stanley Cup championship team in 1999. And they also recognize executives, or not even executives, but people behind the scenes. They honored the president, Jim Lights. They've done Ken Hitchcock, like Bob Gainey, other people who've had great contributions to the organization that weren't players. And so, I saw some of the video, I saw some of the highlights from what the Predators did. And I think that's a great idea. You should celebrate your history. Not every player can get their number retired, but that doesn't mean that a player didn't have, or a person in the organization didn't have a significant contribution to your organization. Like Barry Trotz, like that's another example. Like he's obviously not the highlights, and I thought it was great. I think every team should be doing things like that.
We're speaking with Elliot Friedman from Hockey Night in Canada. He is presented by Old National Bank. Get Old is the sponsor. So, Elliot, speaking of Barry Trotz, you had your report on Ryan O'Reilly.
I gotta say, I'm doing exactly what that timeline says. I am getting old.
Getting old, yes. I think we all are. We're all in your boat. We're all from the same.
I am following the instructions. Yes.
Gen Xers here. We're all in the same boat. Barry Trotz was asked, as you would probably expect earlier this week, to comment on your report on Saturday night about Ryan O'Reilly and how
Yep.
maybe you test the waters and you do it the right way. You have to get your socks knocked off, I think was what Barry said. And then you
Yep.
also, I know, referred on your podcast on the 32 Thoughts that our reporter, Nick Keyser, just went at flat out asked Ryan O'Reilly yesterday at the morning skate, what do you think? So as you've absorbed all of this, do you think everybody's kind of on the same page or where this goes?
Yes. First of all, I called him Nick Kaiser. So immediately, Nick, I apologize for butchering your name. It was inexcusable. You got to get the names right. So, and also I wanted to give Nick credit because he did the work. And, that is what when I saw the quotes, that is exactly what I expected. And that is which is basically what I'd heard. And, I don't know how aware like the national fans are of this. Some of them probably are. Some of them probably aren't. O'Reilly is one of the most respected players in the league. People really like him personally, and the way he plays and the way he competes. And because he doesn't have the protection, there's two positions that people are looking more for than anything else, and that's center and defenseman, top defenseman. And O'Reilly is a top center. So, of course, there's going to be people who ask. And I think the other thing that happens, and I think Barry has acknowledged this, is that when you're having the kind of season you're having, people start coming to you. What are you thinking? What are you doing? Who's available? And so I think it was only normal. I don't think it was anything strange or that anyone has to look for any negative motivation in this. I think it's only normal that people would call Nashville and say, what are you doing with O'Reilly? Which is, I think, exactly what happened. And, like I said on Saturday, and I repeated on the pod, I think Nashville told them it would have to be exactly what Barry said. It would have to be a great offer, and he would have to want to do it. And I saw, judging from what Nick said, he's really not interested in doing it. As you guys know, because you're in the middle of it, the Predators don't want to go into a long rebuild or anything here. They think that this year was an unusual bad start, and they want to kind of try again next year. And O'Reilly's going to be a big part of that. And the other thing, too, is, O'Reilly is still a top center on your team. And you guys have had all of these problems this year trying to get a center. Unless someone you trade for is going to solve that problem for you, you're only creating more of a problem for yourself if you trade O'Reilly. So, and I think the other thing, too, that's at play here is something else I discussed, Willie, on Monday, is that, when O'Reilly signed, Nashville historically hasn't given out no move clauses. They gave one to Yossi for obvious reasons. They gave one to Forsberg for obvious reasons. But they really hadn't done it much else. And then last summer, they gave one to Stamkos. They gave one to Marchessault, and they've given a partial one to Shea. Like, it's no move for a bit, and eventually it changes. And I think, it was kind of like, okay, we have to do that to do this. We told O'Reilly last year we didn't, but I think there was some conversation of, okay, we didn't do it last year. We did it this year. We know we told you we didn't do it, but we're going to honor it in that way for you. Like, you're going to basically have one. And I think that was communicated to O'Reilly, and I think everybody was reminded of that this week.
We're talking with Elliot Freeman, 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, Elliot, could you see there being any other potential trades looming for the Nashville Predators? Because this is what happens, and we all know it, that a team that is, out of the playoffs, mathematically, I know they still have a slight chance, but out of the playoffs, here comes the trade deadline or whatnot, and teams are calling you because they're trying to bolster up their roster for as they head into the playoffs. So can you see any other potential moves that the Predators can make?
Yes. I mean, Nyquist, as we've talked about on this show, Derek, I think that's a name that will be discussed. I would like to say that I've heard kind of these names outside of Nashville, not in. Well, actually, I would say this. I know there's been interest in Lausanne, but the last time I checked it, the Predators said no, they're not doing that. But, I think like this, I know it's coming from outside. I don't believe it's coming from inside. but I think you guys have been asked about players like Sisson and McCarron. Just like, what are you thinking there? And because both those guys have played center, and teams are always looking for centers. So, when I talked about O'Reilly, he's the big sexy name. I had a couple of people this week say to me, they have other centers or guys who played center on that roster too, that are more depth guys that teams would have some interest in, but that's up to the Predators. What do they want to do?
Now, whether they make the playoffs or not, and obviously, again, I know it's a very, very slim chance. How important is it going to be for this team to sort of build up some momentum heading into? And I hate to say it because we're so far from it, but yet and still, you started off slow. You put yourself in this situation. But how critical is it going to be? Because a lot of these guys are going to be the guys that they depend on next season. So how critical is it going to be for them that they play really good hockey moving forward?
And let me add this, Elliot, because D-Mace, I don't know if you heard the recent interview that Barry did with Jared on Tuesday, but Jared asked a really interesting question, I think, where they are. He said, would you rather I can put you in the crystal ball or whatever and say you would lose and get the first pick in the draft, or you're going to play really well but end up drafting, or play well from here to the end of the year, but you're going to finish 10th. And he didn't bat an eye. Barry Trotz's answer was, I would rather pick 10th. It's just not in my DNA to want to lose. So Elliot, give me your thoughts on what Derek asked you.
Well, first of all, I'm sure there are other people in the organization who were looking at some of those guys at the top of the draft and saying, I wouldn't mind having a crack at a couple of them.
It's so funny when you talk to a scout about stuff like that, right? Because the scout's the one that says, man, go ahead and lose. I want the first pick.
I wouldn't even be surprised if deep down Trotz is looking at some of these guys and saying, I wouldn't mind getting a crack at them. But when you're setting the tone for an organization, and Barry was obviously a coach for a long time too, it's never acceptable to send a message that it's okay for your guys to lose. Never. You want, even if you're not winning, you want people competing. Like, the other thing too is you guys have young players around who some of them have been up, some of them have been down. We might see some of them get a chance before the end of the season. You never want them going to be in a dressing room where it's okay to lose, or you get comfortable with losing, or you accept losing. And plus also, you want your fans, when they pay their money to come to Nashville and watch a game, or go to the building and watch a game, you don't ever want them leaving thinking, oh, this was a waste. Like, this team didn't even try. So I think there's a balance of, we want our team to compete. We want our players to play hard. And also, some of these guys are going to be playing for jobs, whether it's Nashville or somewhere else. And you balance between, these guys have to play hard. And there's 4 kids at the top of the draft this year that could go 1. Like, the guys who follow this a lot more than I do say it's going to depend on the team, but there's 4 kids who could go first overall. And one of them is an American kid, Higgins, who plays up in Boston. The other 3 are Canadians. And, I think, if you're Trotz and you're the Predators, you're probably sitting here and saying, I'd love to have one of those guys, but you're not going to come out and say, yeah, I'm okay with 27th, 28th, 30th. That's not the message you want to send to the people who are buying tickets to your games.
Fair, no question. It's interesting. Last night, you were watching Chicago. I know you guys have chronicled the Blackhawks, and that's maybe the cautionary tale, because Barry Trotz says repeatedly, once you get in a habit of losing and the culture becomes losing, it's harder and harder to get back to the culture of winning, which is one of the reasons he backed up that answer. And that makes a lot of sense. And Chicago right now, I know there's been a lot of talk of, hey, how do you get back? It worked so well for them. I think they thought they could recreate history, but is it harder now to do than it was when they seemed it just worked magically, where they had Kane and Taves and then boom, they were winning?
The thing about that, yes. Now, they hit at the top of the draft with those 2 guys. But a couple of people reminded me that before they even had Taves and Kane, they had a defenseman who's going to go to the Hall of Fame. That's Duncan Keith. He's already there. They had Brent Seabrook, who was Keith's regular partner. Those guys, they had some base, and then they hit it out of the park at the top of the lottery. I just think in this league, it is so hard to win right now. And like rebuilding, like this is like in the NBA, you get one or two players and you can build around them to win a championship. In the NFL, you need a great team, but if you get like a top quarterback, like I watch Mahomes now, but you still have to fill talent around them. You know, one player like that can really change your franchise. I don't know if there's a sport right now where you can have one great player and like your best player plays maybe doesn't even play half the game in most cases. So you have to have elite talent and you have to have depth. And I just think it's really hard to do. And you have to have great players on cheap contracts and you have to have good players on big contracts. I think rebuilding right now in the NHL is harder than ever. And I think teams look at Chicago and San Jose and they say, we don't want that. That's not what we want. And a lot of teams, I think, are very afraid of it.
Elliot, we'll leave on this note. A home and home with San Jose next week.
Yeah.
Now, that's weird. It's a long plane ride in between there. It's not exactly Florida to Edmonton like you experienced a bunch of times in the Stanley Cup final last year. But it's a strange piece of travel, but the Askarov story should be interesting as these two teams meet for the first time. I would guess he gets one of those games. You would think that will be good theater, as you like to see.
I hope that if it was me, I got to tell you, Willie, I'd say play me in Nashville. I don't know how the team will feel. I don't know how the kid will feel.
I think the kid would want it. Knowing him, I think he would love it. He wouldn't mind being the villain, I think.
And you know what? To be honest, like if you're going to be a great player in any league, you're going to have to play tough games on the road.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah, time will tell. Elliot, thanks a lot for your time. As usual, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Take care. Speak to you next week.
All right. Elliot Friedman, presented by Old National Bank. Get old. That's the slogan. We're all getting old.
I mean, listen. The slogan.
I feel young.
Get old.
Hey, that's their slogan.
People will remember.
That's how they roll.
Yeah. Get old.
The Old National Bank.
Get old.
That's what my dad tells me every time. Hey, get old.
Yeah,
we're glad they sponsored it. We're glad to have them.
Exactly. I love it.
All right, we're going to wrap up the first hour when we come back, and then we'll get into the divisional matchups at the top of the hour. We'll set the table for that when we return here on DVD. 615-737-1025. DVD continues here. A brief segment before we hit it hard with D Mace's. Now, D Mace, I'm going to set the table for this next segment, and then we're going to get to Trey. You have said for a while
Yes.
that you, and this is, we haven't really updated this much throughout the year because there's been so much drama and chaos with the Titans. But you have not been a huge supporter of Josh Allen in terms of the elite status that many people put him in, right? They're in a window. They're consistent where they've been knocking on the door. They have not been able to get past the Chiefs despite a couple of really, really close playoff games. And now he's got to get past Lamar Jackson, another guy that's got postseason question marks. Somebody's going to have a big win coming up. But before we get into the matchup this weekend, where are you on Josh Allen? Because he has done, I think, some of the things you've criticized before. He has improved. He has cut down on the bad interceptions. Would you agree?
Yes, he has. And, because I was looking at it from the prism of who he was before Stephon Diggs and all those guys got there. And Stephon was already established as a one of the dominant wide receivers in the league. And he was young. He was just coming on. So he was establishing himself. He didn't firmly establish himself, but he was establishing himself as one of the, top 5-7 wide receivers in the league. So you add him to the mix and all of a sudden, I've always thought he was a good quarterback, but I thought they helped him elevate his game. And that's what I would always say about Josh Allen. Was like, it's not like he's elevating them. It's like they're elevating him. But since they've been gone, he's been able to elevate this team minus like a top tier defense, minus a top tier, top flight, elite receiver. They took a few steps back when they chose to trade Stephon Diggs. I think they traded him and not re-sign Gabe Davis. So they took a step back in regards to their, guys on the outside, their wide receivers. But what Josh Allen has been able to do, he's been able to elevate those guys that are there now. The rookie out of Florida State. You have Shakir, who has become a really good receiver, for Josh Allen. So Josh Allen has done a lot of these things, like you said, Willie. The things that I did criticize him on, now he's doing. He's been able to uplift this team minus a true number one. So with that being said, yes, I put him now closer to Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson because I've seen Lamar do it without a true passing game. Now he has one of the best young, receivers in the league in Zay Flowers. A lot of other guys. Bateman is coming on as well, and he has two studs at tight end. Now he has a complete passing game. Now you see what he's really doing. He held the team for a while. Now he has some real guys on the outside. Look at what he's able to do. So now he gets closer to Mahomes as far as in elite status. So what I thought about him 3-4 months ago is totally different now.
Okay, totally different. We're going to get more into that in details. The stats are lights out for these guys. In fact, Skylar on our text line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. Josh Allen, hater, a.k.a. D-Mace. Two here on DVD, 102.5 The Game. Hour number 2 of DVD here on 102.5 The Game. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Joined by Elliot Freeman in the first hour. Adam is off today. It's D. Mace's birthday. Ask D. Mace is coming up at the bottom of the hour. So we're got a lot of good stuff coming. So we're going to set the table and break down the 4 divisional games coming up. So let's start off. Trey has a question for D. Mace. And we're going to get a lot more calls and texts for D. Mace. So get those ready for 12:30. But Trey's been on the line since the last hour. I want to get to Trey. Trey, welcome into the show.
What's up, guys? Happy birthday, D.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Hey, D, after hearing Chad Brinker's presser about having patience, and I wanted to know, because I don't have patience. I don't have patience for him saying to have patience. And I just wanted to know, is it patience for Coach Callahan to develop what he wants as a product for the field, or is it patience for him getting good players? Like, what do you get discern from that? And how much patience do you have for him saying for us to have patience? And you have a good birthday, brother, and y'all have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks, Trey.
Appreciate it, Trey. And listen, this is what we have been talking about since this whole, I'm going to call it a coup. But this whole coup that happened, and then they come out and
I think that's the fishy thing to me.
Yes.
I think if he had come in and they had started saying patience from the start, it would probably play better than because he's been there. Now he's asking for patience.
And
he's
now,
been there. Yeah.
Now you're asking for patience, and it's weird because for one,
because Barry Trott's in contract. We know he's
Barry
came
is
in
up
day
front.
one.
Yeah, day one. He is up front about it.
Yeah.
And you look at the Titans, and I do hope when Nihil and Brinker preach patience, even though Nihil said, he's going to be held accountable, meaning referring to Callahan. Even though I know they said that, and Willie, you said it perfectly. What do they think? He doesn't want to be accountable? Like he just went through his first year and said, you know what, I'm not going to be accountable to anybody. No. So when you say stuff like that, it falls on deaf ears, because I'm sure he want to be held accountable. Are you being held accountable as well? Are you going to be patient with Callahan? Because when you talk about patience, what does that mean for the head coach? When you talk about success, what does that mean for the head coach? Because success is relative to your situation. It's like this was a 3-win team last year. What is success? Is it 6 wins? Is it 8 wins? Is it winning the division? What is success to you based upon where this roster is? So I'm with you, Trey. If you want to preach patience and you want your fan base to have patience with this team, then maybe you should have some patience with your head coach. Now, if he goes out there again and if he shows that he's not competent enough to be a head coach, then okay. But I don't think Brian Callahan has shown that. He's shown to be honest and upfront. He's shown to have, tough skin because of all the questions that come at him. And he seems to be the only person answering the questions, unlike the people, above him. But just think about this, Willie. When Rand Carthon said last year, they asked him what was the division or what was the question they asked him? I think it was what was the division, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to give it to you."
Right at the infamous press conference right after Mike Vrabel was fired and he was thrown out he was hung out on the clothesline.
But isn't
to
that
answer all the questions when he didn't want to step on Mike Vrabel's toes, and he couldn't cross Amy Adams, right? So that was a really tough.
And all of these people were in play: Brinker, Nihil, all of them. It's funny how Rand can't. I don't know if he couldn't give it or if he chose not to give it. But it looks fishy that when that question was asked of Rand, he was like, I'm not going to tell you the vision. But Brinker, first day, The minute he get an opportunity to talk, here's the vision. That seems very fishy to me. One
I think
GM
you
can't
could do-
say what the vision is. The other GM comes, well, he's not the GM, but he is the GM, comes out and
Supreme ruler of
immediately,
football?
Supreme ruler of football.
Give him his name,
Immediately,
his right
exactly.
name.
His right name, his rightful name, the Supreme ruler of football. He comes out very quickly and says, this is what it is. Huh?
I think you could do a pretty good. I know there are certain college curriculums, or you can take a class in media relations, or you can sports management. You know, different things now that you can actually take classes on these things. When I was at Vanderbilt, they didn't offer those. I don't know if they do now. I would have signed up if they could be in there. Sports management, sports media, checklist. But I think you could do an interesting study just on media relations with Rand Carthon, because you're right. He didn't do many press conferences, but when you think of Rand Carthon in front of the media, one of the first ones to come up is that press conference where he was put, in my opinion, in a no-win situation. He had to tap dance around a lot of things. I don't think he could speak freely. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. His choices were either just steamroll Mike Vrabel on the way out and say, no, I didn't get along with Mike Vrabel at all. You know, he tried to walk that line. And at the same time, he had to honor that Amy Adams fired Mike Vrabel. You can't be perfect in that. You can't thread that needle. And he was a young general manager who hadn't really been in that spot. I wonder if that press conference alone, because he took a lot of heat for that, if that influenced him not doing more media after that. Because I still say that his personality should be a strength and should have helped him connect, get his message out, get his own narrative going, and not sit back after that press conference and have people kind of walk all over him.
Yeah, it's
because
almost...
I wonder if Chad Brinker's sitting back. He's watched all this. You know what? I need to get out there a little bit. Like I wonder what he will do from now going forward with that aspect of it.
Yeah, it just seems like to me, and listen, I'm not saying that I've gotten information in regards to what I'm about to say from somebody or not. It's just, as I'm looking at it all play out, you know, you're left to sort of infer what you want, what you will. It's like, okay, Rand went out there to talk, but he knew there were things he just couldn't talk about, like you said. So he has to tap dance around it and look as if he doesn't know how to do a press conference. He doesn't know how to communicate, because that was one of his strengths, right? Communication, that they brought him in. But then you put him on a podium, you restrict him, and now he's talking as if I thought communicating was one of your, strong points. It doesn't look like it's one of your strong points now. But I'm left to wonder, well, did the Titans restrict him? Because it's looking like now he had no say, period. That's what it's looking like from what I'm getting, from what is coming out, through Jared and what he's saying and what Teron has been, alluding to. It seems like you put all these stories together because the Titans aren't saying anything. Rand can't say anything because he has an NDA. You're left to infer,
I have a question too about the NDA. That's been
you're left
discussed
to
a lot.
infer like what is really going on over there?
I still wonder why there's an NDA. It like, was that in the contract beforehand? That seems weird that you would have something that, if that's the case. Because a lot of times I think it should be up to the guy that got fired. Like sometimes the guy that gets fired, it's not like he's got to go in and trash the house, but you answer questions.
Yeah.
And if you're not quote allowed to, you can choose not to answer questions because you want to get hired again somewhere. You want your career not to be affected by looking like you're sour grapes on the way out, but you shouldn't be restricted legally. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I've ever heard that with a fired coach or GM saying he's got an NDA. That was thrown out there as one of the reasons why he didn't really get into anything of note in the interview he did earlier.
And maybe that's why John Robinson hadn't said anything.
He has been very quiet himself for sure since then. All right, let's table that for now. It's 12:15. The Titans still have not hired the new GM. So the clock is ticking on T. Mason to take it to the bank at 1:45 because he said it would be done by today. But let's get back into what we hit at the top of the hour or at the end of last hour. The Ravens-Bills matchup, to me, has got so much intrigue because what is the label of each of these quarterbacks? Josh Allen, incredible stats this year. As we mentioned, he's gone from having double-digit interceptions and as many as 18. Last year, he had 18 interceptions. He had 4 straight years and 5 out of 6 where he had double-digit interceptions. This year, only 6. He's got his interception rate down to just 1.2%. That's really good, especially the way he plays the game. And his QBR, 77.5. And then you've got Lamar Jackson, who's got equally as gaudy numbers. 4 interceptions, over 40 touchdown passes. Both can run. But I guess what I'm getting at is the label on both these, well, they've never gotten their team to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
One of them's going to still be in that category this year, no matter how well he plays in this game coming up this weekend. That is a tough thing to swallow. And then the winner has got to then turn around, presumably, and find a way to go to Arrowhead Stadium and win. It is not easy to get your team to the Super Bowl.
No, it's not. Listen, some teams have sort of a, when you have a quarterback, it sort of, helps. Well, not sort of helps. It really helps. It makes it a little bit easier to predict, a team making it to AFC, NFC championship games or Super Bowls. Because it's just a foregone conclusion the way Kansas City has been playing defensively and with Mahomes at underneath center, the odds are they will make it to the Super Bowl. So when you have a quarterback, your odds get a little bit better. But if you don't have that guy, then yeah, man, it could, because getting to the Super Bowl with the quarterback is hard. Getting to the Super Bowl without that guy, he may be a good quarterback, a solid quarterback, but getting in the playoff, getting into the Super Bowl takes more than just, an okay quarterback. Sometimes it takes more than just an elite quarterback. You got to have players around you. So when you look at these quarterbacks, and you look at these teams, Buffalo and in Baltimore, and you look at what Josh Allen has been able to do. And listen, my tone has been changed, or my tune has been changed in regards to Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen has supplanted himself as a top 3 quarterback in this league. I think it's Mahomes, Jackson, and then Allen, and then Burrow right underneath. Even though Burrow played lights out, I still put him behind those 3 guys. I think Josh Allen has done more than enough, because he has. Listen, if he wins the MVP, great. He would have deserved it. I think Lamar's going to win, and I think Lamar deserves it too. But if Josh Allen got it, I wouldn't be upset. Why? Because what he was able to do with the team that lost 2 key players on offense, lost a few guys on defense, especially in their secondary. And it's almost like they asked him to do more this year than they have in previous years. Why? Because you don't have Gabe Davis. You don't have Stephon Diggs. You don't have guys like that. You don't have Poyer and those guys on the back end on defense. So we're going to ask you to do a little bit more, all while not putting the team in a position to hurt themselves, meaning throwing interceptions, fumbling the ball. He cut down on all of it. So listen, I believe in Josh Allen now. I have no problems with Josh Allen as a top 3 quarterback now.
Both have been, I think, picked apart for some postseason performances. I think if you look at the stats, Allen's numbers look better than Lamar Jackson's numbers. But do you have a sense on this game? The game is in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Buffalo beat the Ravens in the regular season.
The Ravens beat the Buffalo.
Sorry. Ravens beat Buffalo. And at the time, the Ravens probably needed the win.
They were 1-2 or 1-3.
And so there was
3.
There was
1-2. It was 1-2.
There was kind of a little urgency, I think, to that game, more so than the Bills, if I recall correctly. But here they are. Do you have a sense of this game?
It's tough because you don't know which Baltimore defense is going to show up. That's a problem. And the back end has played a lot better. for Baltimore, but that still was their Achilles heel for most of the season. Now, the last 5-6 games, they played a lot better. The defense has played a lot better. They moved Kyle Hamilton to more of his natural spot now, and it seems like that has rejuvenated the defense, especially on the back end. So to me, it's which Baltimore defense shows up, because I don't think Buffalo's defense is great. I think they are a good defense, but I don't think they're a shutdown defense. If you're talking about score for score, then I'm trusting Baltimore's defense to get one stop. But in saying that, which defense is going to show up? Which secondary is going to show up? Is it going to be the one from last week? If it's going to be the one from last week, Buffalo ain't got a chance. But if it's not, then Josh Allen is going to do what Josh Allen does, and he's going to make it a game.
David, I don't know if you've looked at it. I know you follow the Ravens closely. What are we going to get? Crazy winter weather? It says the forecast is for 18 degrees. Is there any kind of crazy wind or snow? I think that's going to be the question. Yeah, up in Buffalo.
Last time, I'm checking it right now. It looks like it's going to be pretty cold. I mean, it's going to be Buffalo weather. I don't think it's going to snow.
The key is
but
the swirly wind. Like you can see
Yeah.
crazy games where you really have to think about what you can call.
Exactly.
I hope it's not like that. Remember there was a pouring snow the one year, and I think Burrow had a great game in Buffalo. So
I can deal with the snow.
Yes.
It's the cold, the extreme cold weather that's different. But if it's snowing, at least it's a little bit warmer.
Yes.
So I can deal with the snow, but the cold, frigid weather, man. Whoo.
What about running if there's actually snow on the field, like we saw a couple times during the regular season? That absolutely can happen.
Yeah, but I think the offensive guys is that we would always say this: you're at an advantage. Why? Because he doesn't know where you're going.
Yeah.
So.
But you didn't have big problems cutting?
No, not really, because listen, they make these fields with, a lot. And I think Buffalo does have a heated field. I know Green Bay has one. There are teams. So I'm sure that it will not be a frozen field. It would,
unless it gets really bad. Yeah, it
doesn't
look like it's going to be like that.
I just
right?
saw on the I'm on the weather app. It says it's going to snow on Saturday, and on Sunday it's going to be 22 with a low of 13.
Okay.
So there might
low
be
of 13. Okay, that should be fun.
Yeah.
In fact, here it is. Put up on the McAfee show here. At kickoff 19, coldest 17. 6 to 7 miles an hour wind. So that's not anything to write home. It doesn't look like maybe some snow in there, but it's Buffalo, so that's what we expect. So
you prefer that over like normal Buffalo weather?
Yes.
Yeah, this time of year.
Where they have the people paid $20 an hour to scoop the snow out of the stands, right? If you scoop, you get in there, you could sit where you want. Sit right in the snow if you want on your seat.
Hey, that's you.
All right, this is a good segue into Ask D-Mace. That's coming up next. Mark will lead us off. If you want to join by phone or by text, and you don't have to ask about these games, you certainly can. It's a great weekend of college football. We've got, by the way, the College Football National Championship coming up on Monday as well. We'll talk to Mitch Light about that on that show. 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Here we are. It's DVD. It's Friday, so hit it. Let's have some fun asking D-Mace when we come back. All right, time to have some fun here on our Ask D Mace segment. We do it every Friday at this time, 12:30. Ask D Mace anything. Titans issues. There are plenty of current events, shall we say. Please feel free to hit him about those. You've got a huge weekend of divisional playoff games here. We're excited about those, but you can expand. You've got an open canvas. You can ask him about movies. You can ask him about TV shows. You can ask him about music. You can ask him about life questions, because D-Mace is a life coach. And it is his birthday. It's his birthday, so you can, just wish him a happy birthday on the text line.
Exactly.
Or on the phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. All right, Mark has been waiting patiently. Let's start with him. Mark, what do you got for D-Mace today?
Hey, what's up, Willie D. Mace?
Oh,
hey,
it's
news.
Mark. Okay. I should have known.
Hey, happy birthday, D. Mace.
Hey,
I got
thank
some
you,
breaking
Mark.
news for y'all.
Breaking news.
Breaking news found out today through DNA. Chad Brinker's my dad. So he told me,
Oh, boy.
hey, son, you go in there and you cut throat and take some jobs. So, Adam, I'm bumping you off. I'm getting ready to take your job Monday. You just stay at home. The new show will be MD and D. Mark, Donnie, and D-Mace.
Boy, the poor guy takes one day off of the show.
Man.
And
He's
he's
gone.
replaced by Mark.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm sponsored by Amy Adams Strunk today. So my sponsorship today, Amy sponsored me. I called on a payphone last night. She told me to take care of business. But D-Mace, I see Baltimore winning this game Sunday.
Mhm.
My pick from the first of the year was Baltimore and Detroit for the Super Bowl, going back to last season's game when Detroit went to Baltimore and Ronnie Stanley ran that cornerback up into the stands with that block. So I'm looking at that, and I'm also looking at Houston defeating Kansas City, Baltimore, Houston for the AFC Championship game. So what do you think about that?
All right. Thanks a lot for the call, Mark. So let's we haven't hit on the Houston
Yes.
matchup. Do you think Houston has a chance?
Yeah, I think Houston does. I think one of the reasons is Kansas City's been off for 21 days. Houston needs to take advantage of that, and they need to take advantage of it quickly. CJ Stroud started off slow in the last playoff, was able to pick it up. He can't start slow against a Kansas City Chiefs team that hasn't played in 21 days. You got to take advantage of the rust that is going to be there. Yes, they have Patrick Mahomes, but I still think there's going to be some rust at the beginning. So if that's the case, you got to take advantage of it. So I do believe with that defense, if they play like they did last week, yeah, they have more than a slight chance to win, I believe. But they're gonna have to take advantage of Kansas City early in order to I think have a shot at winning this game. And then obviously we talked about Buffalo and in Baltimore. If Baltimore secondary plays the way they have been playing, I don't see Buffalo beating them because Buffalo's not stout enough up front to stop Derrick Henry. And then you add Lamar Jackson to it. Pittsburgh tried to take away Derrick Henry and see what Lamar Jackson did. I'm sure Buffalo is going to try to take away Lamar Jackson. And I'm sure Derrick Henry is going to go off. So it's like
he still had 180 yards.
It's like you got to pick your
last
poison
week
with these two. And even if you pick
that didn't work very well with my take it to the bank.
If you pick the right elixir, you still may be wrong.
It's pick your poison.
Yeah,
you're
even
right.
if either one you pick, it may still be wrong. The way Lamar Jackson had over 100 as well, or close to it. So it's like you just hope if you're Buffalo that you can force Baltimore into mistakes on offense and that you can exploit that secondary that had trouble at the beginning of the year.
615-737-1025. We've got a lot of calls and texts for Ask D-Mace, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's go to the text line. Wes says, how in the world can the Titans be like the Green Bay Packers when they have no owner? In other words, the Packers are owned by the people, right? You could buy stock. They don't have one person. And we, the Titans, have a completely sporadic owner that can't control her urges? Now, that is an interesting question.
Yeah, and that's why I said, listen, it's good to look at one's model and say, you know what? There are some things that we can pull out there. We can do a little bit of that, maybe that, but trying to bring the whole model over may turn out to be a little bit difficult because, again, Green Bay has been at this. Let's just say when they brought Brett Favre over in the trade, because they didn't draft him. They didn't draft Brett Favre. They got him in the trade. Atlanta drafted him, and they ended up getting Brett Favre in the trade. So let's just say that's when sort of the Green Bay sort of format started. That was what, 30-something years ago?
Mm-hmm.
You're
Because
on the
when
ground. You're on the
first
ground
started
floor right
watching
now.
NFL when I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
they in the pre-Favre in the 70s and 80s,
It was Mac. What was his name?
Don Majkowski,
Yeah, Majkowski.
the Magic Man.
Yeah.
He was spelled more like Majowski,
Exactly.
but it sounded like Majkowski. And he kind of brought him up from being
Mhm.
a very non-interesting team for a long time to
But
at
they
least
still were
interesting.
bad.
Yeah, but they didn't win anything big with
Uh-huh.
him. He had some good moments. That was late 80s, I think, pre-Favre.
Mhm.
But, when I can remember Bart Starr being the coach,
Mhm.
they had a couple decent teams, but they probably went 15 years without doing anything.
Exactly.
In the mid-70s through the 80s.
Mhm.
So it's not like everybody has it figured out forever. Of course, there was the Vince Lombardi,
Yeah.
the heyday and all of that. But I do think that is a dangerous thing to say, we're going to do it like the Packers. If that's the route they go. There's heavy speculation by some that Chad Brinker, who came from the Packers, is going to hire one of his colleagues that he's worked with before, and they're going to try to implement what has worked there. Makes sense, but it is interesting to point that out. All right, let's go to Fred, who's up next. He's got a question for Derek on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Derek, I have a question about the conversation with quarterback draft possibilities. You hear a lot about reading defenses, reading the plays, mental ability. Why is no one talking about the different mental capabilities of the prospect? Is there some reason why you don't discuss that?
In regards to, I think these evaluators, that is part of the, their evaluation, not just, the physical tools. They understand, especially for a quarterback, they understand there has to be, some physical tools to play that position. They would like you to have a strong arm. They would like you to be, above 6'3", 6'4", with a little mobility. But I think most of all, they want to know your aptitude. They want to know how you read defenses. Can you regurgitate a big playbook? Can you sort of, I sit you in a room, can you diagram plays? Can you do all this? So they go through all of that throughout the draft process. They bring you in, you meet with GMs.
Do we want to go down the road of the Wonderlic?
Exactly.
And what was the name of the test? Do you guys remember with
from last
CJ Stroud,
2 years ago,
who supposedly didn't do well on that
Exactly.
test? That was like the new cutting edge thing that was supposed to give you a picture
Uh-huh.
of how a guy would process things. But I don't think we've figured out the
Exactly.
exact science on that.
No,
right?
We haven't. And I don't know if you ever will, in regards to, because some guys learn differently. But to the caller's question, they do. That is a big, as far as when they are evaluating prospects, I think that means just as much as, the physical play.
Oh, it's huge, right?
Especially when it comes to a quarterback.
It's just
because
hard
they got to know
project.
everything. Yeah.
I played with a lot of guys at Vanderbilt who were great students in the classroom, but we're not as good as what we're talking about. Just the feel for the game, the processing, the thing. Like, they are two different. It's hard to really nail down who's going to be good at that. You can try. Sometimes you'll be right, but it's not an exact science. All right, let's go back to the phone. 615-737-1025. Got one from our text line from Drew in Mount Juliet. Was Ran a fall guy for the decision Brinker and Amy's inside decisions? Was Ran a fall guy for the decision
I guess
Brinker,
what he's
it's
saying
like-
is,
and he says happy birthday.
thank you, I appreciate it. Basically, he's saying, did the Titans make Rand Carthon the fall guy when in actuality, Brinkert and Knight, just to say Brinkert was the guy that had a hand in
I think if you were to make a movie
yeah.
out of the last 2 years about starting from when Rand and Brinker came in to now, I think that would be the plot.
Exactly.
That's what everybody would want to know. Like, I'm not saying I know what happened,
Exactly.
but I think that's what the movie would try to follow.
Exactly.
Right? Is what happened, and because it does look like it's got the makings of when Rand brought in Chad Brinker, and Chad Brinker is still alive and in the job, and Rand is gone. That what happened? That's what people would want to know.
And it's starting to look, because again, the way all of this happens, you don't hear the owner talk. The owner doesn't address it. She addresses it, but with a statement. She doesn't get out in front and take questions. The GM doesn't get out in front and take questions. They leave it all for who? Well, the head coach. Well, you wait until the head coach answers all the questions, and then you fire the GM the next day or 2 days later. So now the coach don't have to answer those questions, and neither do you. You can put out a statement, or you can go around to certain individuals and try to push your narrative. Fine and dandy. I get it, but it just seems like, and if y'all want to change the narrative, y'all had your opportunity to do. You can't change it now. The narrative can't be changed on, I think, how people view what the Titans did in this situation, because they didn't do it right the first go around. When it initially happened, they didn't do it right, and they still haven't done it right, at least in my eyes. So it does look like Rand is sort of the fall guy in this situation. I'm not saying that's totally true, but that's the perception.
We're going to come back with more questions for D-Mace. We got a lot of you on the line that want to talk to him. We've got text lined up as well. 615-737-1025. Right now on the Pat McAfee show, I can't hear anything that's being said. We just have the screen on, so we have the ticker, and we always have that. Pac-Man Jones is the guest. Now, if you'd have told me back in whatever year that was, 2006, 2000, when he was in the news for the wrong reasons and he was playing for the Titans, and you told me he's going to be a host of his own podcast, he will have played in the league for double-digit years, I would have said, are you crazy? There's no way this guy's going to be successful. But give him credit. The guy has grown out of all of the nuttiness and craziness. That is a phenomenon. We learn. There's amazing things you learn living every day. When we come back, more of Ask D-Mace here on DVD. Well, speaking of the Predators, they are back in action tomorrow night. It is a Saturday night in Smashville. Division rival, Minnesota Wild in town. John Hines coaching. It's got the makings. There were two tough losses in Minnesota. Nashville easily could have won both, but it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's a results-based results-based business. And so let's see what happens in the rematch in Nashville. And also, this will be the first time the two teams have met since the Zach LaRue, Jared Spurgeon slew foot. So that will be a game within the game, shall we say. It could be pretty spicy. It will be brought to you in part by League Company. They are the sponsor of our pregame coverage, which starts at 6 o'clock with Max Hurst. Pete Weber, Jay Moore will be on the call here on 102.5 The Game. We'll have the broadcast for you, of course, on FanDuel Sports Network as well with C. Mace and I. And League Company is a big sponsor of Nashville Predators hockey. But League Company is so much more than that. They've been in business for 80 years, since 1944. They do tremendous things when it comes to your heating unit. Hey, if your heating unit is not getting the job done for you, look, I've been there. They're just a phone call away, 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. Get the experts out there, find out what's going on, and then think about going forward a year-round relationship with them to get those checkups, because that can save you a lot of money over the long haul. Find the little problems before they become big problems. Here's the phone number again for League Company, 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. League Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators. Yes, we had our fun memories of this album, License to Ill. We specified a tape back in the day, at least for me, when I was, I believe, in the 10th grade. That was going. We had a guy on our team, D Mace, as we get back to our D Mace, Ask D Mace segment here on the show. Walk down memory lane. I had a history class, and one of the linebackers on the football team, good friend, his name was Jarrett Bowie. He knew every word to every song. And we would have like worksheets to do during the class, and he would be going through, he would be singing the song because he knew he could make me laugh doing all the words to all these songs. And finally, the teacher would come in and say, Jared, can you please chill out until you get the work done? Take it out to the hallway when the class is over, okay? Lunch is coming up. He tried to get everybody in trouble. All right, we're going back to the phone. 615-737-1025. You knew it was coming. It happens every Friday. We've got to get to Eric.
Yes.
He does have a dad joke. I guess this has clearance.
Yes. Actually,
Have you workshopped this, Eric? Have you talked to your friends and family? Said this is the one I'm going to throw at D Mace on Friday. Do you think this is good? Do you feel good about this one?
Well, yes. Well, first of all, I want to wish D Mace a happy birthday.
Okay.
I had to make sure I called in for his birthday. But this actually, guys, 90% of the jokes, like I said, I hear it through family and friends, TV, radio. This is actually a joke I made up myself. So I hope you like it. I've told two like that before. One you like, the other one just kind of, So I hope you like this one. What do you get when you cross an Irishman with a hair?
An Irishman with the hair. A hairy Irishman?
No.
Hey, I think that's acceptable.
No,
exactly.
That's pretty good.
No. Hopscotch.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm gonna use that.
Like this. Yeah. So, guys, and we've talked a lot about the Baltimore Buffalo game, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it from a couple things I'm coming from. One point that somebody made this morning, this was a point I never thought about, but I thought was a valid point. We're focused so much on Derrick Henry, and I think certainly that's a concern for Buffalo. But his point was we're not talking about the other running back, James Cook, and he thinks that Buffalo's got a shot to win if he can run the ball and keep him off the field. And in fact, he made a bold prediction. He thought that James Cook was going to have a bigger game than Derrick Henry, which, guys, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. I would not be shocked if that does happen, if James Cook has a bigger game than Derrick Henry, because we forget about him as the other running back. But my point, though, is this, guys. One of the things is, say Baltimore loses this ball game, and in the past, Lamar Jackson has faced a huge share of criticism. Some of it, I think, is warranted. Some of it's not. I thought it was undeserved. We even criticized Todd Monken for his offensive play caller last year. But there's one point that people start to bring up. If they lose this game, then they think John Harbaugh should start to get some more criticism, because we're going to start getting on Lamar for his play and Todd Monken for his play caller. Ultimately, the head coach, John Harbaugh, also should deserve some flack. Because we get on Mike McCarthy's won like his 12-5-3 straight years, didn't win the playoff game, and he's only won one Super Bowl. Well, Harbaugh's only won one Super Bowl. And I know, Derek, you played for the Ravens, but some are saying that you've got to start throwing some shade or at least some criticism John Harbaugh's way, and just want to get your thoughts on that, and also about James Cook and about his role in the game. Guys, it's always good to talk to you. Y'all take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Eric. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Eric. I wouldn't bet my money that James Cook will have a better game than Derrick Henry, but I wouldn't be surprised, because I think Buffalo's going to try to do anything and everything they can to stop Derrick Henry. It may work, it may not. His history with Buffalo says it will not work, because he's basically ran through Buffalo every time they played him.
That Monday night game.
Exactly. And they tried to stop him.
Yeah.
And
then the weird, what night of the week was that during COVID, where they played like on Wednesday or Tuesday?
Yeah, it was like a
something
Tuesday or
that?
Wednesday. Something. Yeah.
And he stiff armed the guy. Like, that still is it's got to be a lasting memory for a Buffalo fan, when Buffalo was complaining, why do we have to do this? They messed up all the rules and everything. And the Titans hadn't practiced or anything, and they still went out and
they still went out. Why? Because they had a hard time at stopping Derrick Henry.
Right. And you said this the day that they signed Derrick Henry, the Ravens.
Yeah.
They got him for what?
They got him for the playoffs.
For the playoffs.
Yeah, and they got him, more importantly, for Kansas City. They believe, I believe this. Baltimore believes that any other team, any AFC that enters the playoff with them, they can beat. They can beat with Lamar. They feel they can beat with Lamar. Lamar, winning games through the air or with his legs. But I think Kansas City is the one team that they can't beat with Lamar going toe-to-toe. They tried it already. It didn't work. You can't. If you try to go toe-to-toe, Josh Allen found that out. You try to go toe-to-toe, throwing the football with Patrick Mahomes, you're going to lose. Why? Because somehow, some way, his defense is going to get one stop. That's all they need, 1 or 2 stops. And what is Patrick Mahomes going to do when he get that stop? He's going to score. So you can't go score, throw for throw with Patrick Mahomes. You got to be able to run the ball, slow the game down, and take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand. That's what the Tennessee Titans mean. Baltimore Ravens found out last year. That's why they went and got Derrick Henry. Wasn't for the regular season, though he had a hell of a regular season. It was for the playoffs because they don't want to have to go into a playoff trying to outthrow Patrick Mahomes and really not have to outthrow a Josh Allen, really, but they can get away with trying to outthrow Josh Allen. When you try to outthrow Patrick Mahomes, I think you lose every time.
The beauty of Derrick Henry, too, is I can visualize a few big games he had against the Chiefs as well, including a playoff game way back.
But what happened? They still end up losing.
Yeah.
They still end up losing in the playoffs, even with Derrick Henry having a big game. Why? Because you try to go toe-to-toe with
I was
Kansas
thinking
City.
of Henry with the Titans in regular season as well, but there was one playoff game with Mariota.
Yeah.
The one playoff game they won with Mariota where he threw the touchdown pass to himself, the big comeback. Yes. Derrick Henry was still sort of on the rise, but he had a really good game in that game. So Derrick Henry in the postseason, this is what this will be a big focus here in these parts, shall we say. Let's get to Jerry next up for Ask D-Mace here on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Happy birthday, D-Mace.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
When are we going to see D-Mace, the action star or the leader of a television series?
Ooh, very good question, Jerry.
Well, I mean, my son's only 21 years old, so maybe he'll be in movies or not. I don't know. He has the face for movies, so he should be in movies. But me, I don't know. I don't think there's gonna, unless somebody want to throw me in a movie that
You're not ready to just reveal the big scoop today that you're going to unveil that the TV show is coming up. What if we had, Netflix, they have QB and they have receiver. What about just like DVD? They have the inside. They get the best of our show, the inside stuff, all of our.
We can make our show a movie.
Texting, the ribbing of Chris Sanders. I feel we got something there.
Yeah, I think we can make our show a movie.
We're hip. We're exciting.
Yeah.
I think the people want to see this.
We can be the alter ego of Anchorman.
Exactly. The PG version of Anchorman.
The PG version of Anchorman.
Oh, yes. You got to give the people what they want. All right, let's go to Kevin is up next. Let's squeeze 1 or 2 more questions in for D-Mace. Kevin, welcome in.
Hey, thank you. Happy birthday, Derek Mace.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, brother. I know you don't want to toot your own horn, but they mentioned your receiving yards. What is the term to get in the Hall of Fame like yourself there? Is it Pro Bowl appearances or receiving yards? Because you're probably right up there pretty close to the top.
Listen.
Thanks,
I don't
Kevin.
know. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. I don't know necessarily what the criteria are. Are my numbers?
We've hashed all this out on the air. We probably don't have time to go back through it all. Yeah. It is a really interesting process, shall we say, and you can make some really interesting arguments for a lot of people. I know baseball just had their vote here recently, and there's a lot of people who vote that reveal, here's who I voted for. Their process is different than the NFL, but I think from now until 50 years from now, you can flip on a show like this, and there'll be people debating whether so-and-so should get into the Hall of Fame. There's always those borderline guys.
Yeah, there's always guys.
It's tough for you, I'm sure, to live with, because every year you're like, what about me?
Do I believe I deserve? Hell yeah, I do believe I deserve. Absolutely.
Just like the great Isaiah Thomas said, I meet the requirements to be on the team.
Exactly. But are they going to choose to put me in? I meet the criteria, my yardage, everything else. If you want to, put them next to the rest of the Hall of Famers, they stack up. I will put my numbers against, and I've said it, and it's no disrespect to those guys, because I looked up to a lot of them that are in the Hall of Fame, even while playing, against them. But nobody's going to tell me that my numbers are not Hall of Fame worthy. They are Hall of Fame worthy. I worked too hard to try to diminish my light. So when somebody asks me, do you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? I tell them, hell yeah, I deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, because I understand what I had to go through and what I put in. And then you match all that up with the numbers that I had without, a bone of Steve was great. Steve was great, but no one looked at him like a Peyton Manning.
You never
or
played for
Tom
Air
Brady.
Coryell
Exactly. I
or a
didn't play
team
for a
that really
passing
passed
team.
a lot
Exactly.
that you could look
And they didn't let Steve, and that's why he was never thought of as like a Trent, not a Trent Dilfer, but the quarterback for the Rams when they won their Super Bowl.
Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner. He was never thought of as a why?
It
Because they
wasn't
didn't
the
let
greatest show on turf.
Exactly.
Design.
They didn't let him throw. He didn't have to throw, or that wasn't our sort of approach to winning games. Could Steve have done it? Absolutely. Steve could have, threw for 300-400 yards a game, but that wasn't our approach. Our approach was run the football with Eddie George, and we did a damn good job at that, to play great defense and to let Steve McNair just take care of the rest. We were a running team, play great defense, and Steve was never, even with the great Mike Heimerdinger, there still was, we're not going to become this pass-oriented team. And I understand.
And the Ravens weren't really different.
And the Ravens were not, they were the same way. And I understand when you have a Jamal Lewis, in Baltimore, a 2,000-yard run, a hell of a back, potential Hall of Famer himself, and you have an Eddie George here, a borderline Hall of Famer himself as well. That's, you take on the personality of those two guys. And that's who we were as a team. But make no mistakes, my numbers says that, yeah, I should be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm going to speak on that. And I will continue to speak on that.
We will take a show in the summer and go through it all for the deep dive into my argument, which I'm sure is also Derek's argument.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into some of these things. But we're out of time for this edition of Ask D Mace. Thank you for all the callers and texters. Great stuff. Jonathan Hutton is on the other side. We'll get into the Titans and the GM countdown. Who's going to be the next guy? Where do we go from here? And we'll get his thoughts on all of the 4 games that are coming up this weekend. We'll end the hour with Take It to the Bank. Stay tuned. Ah, yes, the final hour of the show. It's DVD. Adam Vingan is off today. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, our producer David Janes, who is getting more and more nervous by the minute because the Ravens, that's his team, they got a big game. A lot on the line with the Bills-Ravens game. That is got, in my mind, the top billing this weekend. We also have Take It to the Bank coming up at 1:45. The clock is ticking. D-Mace, he made the pick last week.
Minutes. I got 52 more
What
minutes.
is the cutoff?
158.
Commissioner James?
158.
158.
I got 52 more minutes.
Will the Titans name their GM? So D-Mace gets big points in the Take It to the Bank segment.
Hold on, David. How many points could I potentially? Don't tell me how many points I would get.
2.
But how many points I can potentially get
2.
with that?
2.
No, it ain't a 2-pointer.
Well, since you call if you called it, it's a 4-pointer.
Okay.
Because he called it. So it's like,
Okay.
it's not like you said, oh, sometime next week.
Yeah.
You said Friday. High Friday.
Exactly.
All
there
right.
we go.
Well, it is Friday, and that's not normally the time that we talk to Jonathan Hutton, but we're going to bring him on here in a moment. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. All right, Hut, you heard the backdrop here. Do you think we got any chance? Are the Titans close to naming a GM?
I mean, they have to be, right? Unless they're doing like a third set of interviews coming up. So the finalist interviews, they're over. The 6 guys have been through, and I would presume it's got to be much like, I say it has to be. It doesn't have to be, but I would presume it has to be like much like it was with Brian Callahan. You don't want the guy to leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the case of John Eric Sullivan, I mean, he interviewed a couple days ago with the Jets, for instance. So if you want your guy, go get your guy.
Do you think that's the guy that would be the favorite in your mind? Or are you leaning towards one guy? There seems to be a lot of momentum of Sullivan with the Green Bay ties seems to be a guy I hear a lot about.
Yeah, and look, I agree with those that say there's not many that are pointing this out. I mean, if you're making a hire, by and large across the league, it's not what you know, but who you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that goes up a long way to a lot of different businesses. So, I mean, I would suspect I would lean on what I know and who I have connections with, just like Chad Brinker will be doing. I think that would be natural. And look, I think that of the 6 finalists, just going through some of the resumes, I like a lot of what I see in terms of the football background, the scouting background. So I don't think they can necessarily go wrong with a football guy in that position. But in lockstep with whatever they're doing, and with Brinker having the final say, you would want someone in that role, Willie, that understands what Brinker's all about. Because if you're not about that path, you're going to be overruled. So why take the job in the first place?
Now, with that being said, Hutton, are you okay with this perception of, okay, he's just going to go get his guy? He's already earmarked Sullivan. This is just, we're going through the formality. I want to hire Sullivan. I'm sure he understands that. Are you okay with that and the potential of them being this Green Bay AFC, South in a sense? I'm okay with it if they're winning, but to me, they got to also understand that it took Green Bay decades to build that culture and who they are. They just didn't do it overnight. So if you want to have some resemblance of Green Bay, you got to understand that it's going to be a long process, and it's going to be more about you and what you add to it rather than how they all put it together in Green Bay.
I mean, when I hear this, it all sounds great.
Exactly.
There are a lot of similarities with the Titans and Packers in this way. Like the game day atmosphere at Nissan Stadium was built a lot around what they did at Lambeau Field. That whole dun 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 dun, dun go Titans go. That's a go Pack go.
Yes, that was noticed very early in the first year. Like, hey, that sounds a lot like what they play at Lambeau Field.
This isn't the first time we've heard that. Let's emulate the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. Look, I'm okay with it, Mace, because it's on the right track. Green Bay. So let's go to the draft, develop, and retain. Literally every organization wants to do that. The Titans haven't been doing that. So even if if I want to sit here and laugh at that, which I mean, initially I'm like, okay, like 32 organizations want to do that. And I said that last week, and that's true. I mean, you're speaking what I think everyone is like, oh, that's common sense. The Titans haven't been drafting well. They haven't been developing talent, and they haven't been retaining their draft picks. So if you're behind closed doors there at St. Thomas Sports Park and you're saying that, I mean, that's counter to what has gotten you where you are. So that's good, is what I'm saying. So that's what you want to be doing that. And if you point to Brinker's background, that's what he's going to point to. You lean on what you've done as your resume, and that to me makes sense. So if the Titans can absolutely end up making the right move here. Despite how they got here, it's what fan base is going to have to go with it. If you're a fan of the Titans, they can end up making the right hire, and John Eric Sullivan can be the right hire. It can be one of the other guys too. But I mean, again, the Titans aren't the only organization interested in talking with him. But again, the Jets interviewed him for their GM role.
Now, another thing that we thought would happen fairly early, but it hasn't happened at all. The coaching changes on the Titans roster. Now, it looks as if they're not going to make any changes, at least as of now. They haven't. But if you listen to Brian Callahan talk, because I think everyone just assumed, even, myself or, a lot of other people, that the first guy that would be out immediately would be the special teams coach. But if you listen to Brian Callahan and the way he talked about him that last 3 or 4 weeks of the season, he spoke highly of him. The special teams is improving. We put guys in certain places. Our kickoff coverage and punt coverage has gotten a lot better. And when I hear that, I also hear, you know what? I may just give my special teams coach another opportunity at getting this thing right, because he did show that he could adapt. It may have been later on in the season, but he adapted, and our special teams unit got a lot better.
Here's what we don't know, and what's in the fine print of what Brian Callahan has control over, because in the description of this GM role, Brinker has laid out that this guy oversees the coaching staff. So if what does that mean? Is he just evaluating the job in season, and he's going to pull, like, if he's not happy with Callahan's play calling, is he going to make that call? I have no idea the intricacies of that definition. But if you're waiting to make coaching changes because you're waiting to make a general manager hire, that could be part of it. But they could also want to interview some coaches who are still in the playoffs. That's all well and good. That doesn't mean you can't go ahead and make changes to allow the coaches that are losing their jobs to go find other jobs.
Exactly. I'm
interested by the timing. Normally it's within that first week after the season ends, because guys are able, even if you're retained, you take a step back and you kind of take a breath before you go into the full off season. After you have all your meetings going into the off-season planning. I think if Rand Carthon were still employed, we probably know the answer to this by now. But the fact that they're looking for the GM, I think that plays a role into why we haven't heard anything.
Hud, I'm going to ask you
You guys agree, by the way?
Well, yeah, and this is where I was going to go with the follow-up, because I asked Derek this question, and Hud, you can go far enough back, you can probably remember some examples of what I'm going to throw out there. Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese worked together way longer than the average GM head coach tandem, right? They were in the same place for a long time, but they had some battles on who is in charge of what. And one thing Jeff Fisher definitely fought for was the right to his own staff. He basically said, look, I want to make the call on my assistant coaches. You can't come in and tell me that I've got to fire this guy or that guy. And I think, if I remember this correctly, that it was Alan Lowry one time where you guys had a kind of a rough year, teammates on special. He fought hard to keep Alan Lowry, and this was before the Music City Miracle. So that turned out pretty well. You know what I mean? But philosophically, I asked Derek earlier this week, if you're the head coach, do you think that's a right that you should have to be able to take the feedback, but say, I make the final call on my staff?
But people, hold on quick, Hud. But people don't realize is that Lowry was the receivers coach when I first got there.
Interesting.
He was the wide receivers coach when I first got there, and then transition. He had always been doing special teams and Texas stuff, but he was my wide receivers coach when I first got there.
Do you guys agree with this? I think if I'm a head coach, I have to have control over my staff because that's reflective of me. My job is with them. It's me and the staff. If you're interviewing for a job as head coach, you're discussing in your second interview what your staff's going to look like. Just like if you're interviewing for general manager and there's a head coaching vacancy, you're in the second interview, when you're called back, they're going to ask you who you're going to bring in to interview. They want to know your connections and your background. Here's where I think there needs to be someone needs to oversee things. Coaches bring in their friends with their first staff because you go with who you know. And you don't, that's a difficult thing to do, is to move on from your friends. Ask Mike Norvell right now at Florida State. He had to do it midseason. Mike Mularkey didn't want to do that. Whenever he was let go here, he didn't want to get rid of some. He didn't want to make some changes.
Right. That was what we got into. That's a really good point, is that through the years, you can cite a lot of examples of the loyalty to the people you're comfortable with, where you're told from above, either this guy goes or you're going to go with him. And that draws a hard line, and you get some pretty good friction there.
Yeah. I mean, but you do need someone to tell you with no invested friendship with the staff. And not everyone's a best friend thing here. Sometimes there's arranged marriages through someone bringing someone else in. My point, though, is like, I think it would be easier for Vrabel to get rid of Matt LaFleur, who he's paired up with, than some of his other buddies who he brought in from Houston. There's and that would go for any job, I think. So I think everyone can relate to that feeling. But there are awkward moments, especially for first-time head coaches, where you have to make those decisions. And I think you deserve, as a head coach, to make those calls. But if you don't, it's not. If it's not up to you, then we're on someone else's timetable. We're not on Callahan's timetable right now.
Now, looking at
again, I don't know the reading between the lines what that one sentence means when it says oversee the staff. Is it literally hire and fire? Or is it overseen to make sure that development is happening, and then you're telling the head coach in a very detailed and difficult meeting what really needs to happen on his behalf?
Well, like you said, I think we'll find out a lot of those questions once they do indeed hire a GM at 158, because that's when they need to do it, at 158. Okay. Before we get off the air.
Hey, by the way,
yes,
the firings. I mean, typically with any organization, it comes on a Friday on news dump, May. So I think you're onto something.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can get it so I can win silly underdogs. I mean, not silly underdogs, but take it to the bank.
Yeah,
take it to the bank. I can win, take it to the bank. Okay, now
both.
Let's transition to the draft. Obviously, them having a number one pick, they can go several different. There could be several different scenarios for the Titans in regards to whether they keep it, trade out of it, move back, how far they move back. In this situation, I understand that, listen, they need a franchise quarterback. And I'm going to keep on pounding on the table until they get one, and they need to have one before they move into that stadium. But knowing that shouldn't put you in a position to be desperate. So with that being said, what do you think would be the best move for the Titans in their current state? I know we'll know a lot of things once free agency starting about how they may go in the draft, but as of now, free agency hadn't started. So what do you think is the best road for the Tennessee Titans?
The best road is to find a franchise quarterback. But that's not me saying there's one in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to go with what you're hired to do, and that is you're either tying yourself to one of the quarterbacks, or you're going to trade the pick for future picks and build the roster up through high draft picks where you're going to draft well. Again, yes, if the quarterback's there and you need a quarterback, everyone says take the quarterback. If you're dead set on the fact there's not a franchise, you can't take the quarterback. You take the draft haul. It's up to their evaluation. All these, it's very interesting that there are a lot of reports. I say a lot. There have been a lot of reports that there's not a franchise quarterback in this draft. This happened in November and December, and a lot of the scouting departments haven't even met with the general managers across the league yet. The combine hasn't happened. The pro days haven't happened. That all that can be true, but there's also these leaks, reports that the Titans are just enamored with Cam Ward. I don't know how to go into that with Brinker taking over, and those reports were happening when Carthon was still employed, and the scouting staff, which by and large is John Robinson's scouting staff, is currently making those recommendations. I just don't know what is real and what's not, and we don't know. There's always the draft, and then there's the quarterback draft. And if you're empty at quarterback, which the Titans are, you take the quarterback, but don't waste the pick on a quarterback that you're not just 100% in on. You're just taking the QB because you have the number one pick. Again, that sounds like common sense. You'll get ripped for it, but if the guys don't pan out, they don't pan out. And if you're going based on your background and your knowledge and your expertise that he's not your guy, I wouldn't force it. However, Callahan has to do something this year, and the quarterback situation is going to play a massive role, a huge role in that, because he's known for developing quarterbacks. That didn't happen with Will Levis. And then what happens in year two with the quarterback situation we're unsure of. Is it a veteran? Is it a rookie? And how much development will we see in that position? That's the biggest unknown right now for the future of the Titans is head coach and quarterback.
There was a story that Tehran put out earlier today. I want to get your notes now that we're talking a little bit about this strategy here. Shedeur Sanders will be at the East-West Shrine Bowl, and the Titans have an offensive assistant coach who's an assistant wide receivers coach who will be the quarterback's coach at this. So he'll be working closely with Shedeur, named Peyton McCullum. What do you read into that?
They're doing exactly what they have to do. They're grinding. They're starting that grind process right now. And, this is the preliminary note-taking that goes into what you're going to do at the private workout, what you want to see, what you want the general manager, the assistant GM, the head coach to actually get their eyes and ears on how they answer questions or what they're doing technically with their technique. That's what you want, that hopefully you can pick up on in person that you wouldn't be able to pick up on based on watching film. So the meticulous grading process is what's going to take place for all these guys. But as we've seen, Willie, there's plenty of teams that will be doing the exact same thing that currently have a veteran quarterback and they're not in the quarterback market. They're doing exactly what they should be doing. And if Cam Ward were doing anything, hopefully they would be doing the same thing there.
Now, Hud, do you think, say, 3-4 years, probably a little bit longer than that, we will view this whole Ran Carthon, debacle as something, different than what we look at it now? Because, we talked about his drafts. You can talk about Peter Skoronski being drafted as a guard. He's starting to come out. It seems like he really didn't have much say in a lot of this. I don't want to believe that, but that seems to be what's coming out. So if that is indeed the case, yes, you didn't get Peter Skoronski hadn't played like the number 7th pick in the draft. Has he gotten better? Well, judging by what Callahan said, Brian, yes, he has gotten a lot better. Tajay Spears, if he just stay on the field, he's shown that he can make plays in this league. He's shown that he can be a critical guy for your team on the offensive side of the ball. You look at that draft. You look at a few more guys out of that draft 2 years ago. And then you look at this year's draft, J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat, guys like that. That Tavondre Sweat, he was on the all-rookie team as an interior guy. Some has even said it. And listen, he may end up being the best interior guy out of the whole draft, period. When you start looking at these guys and you start seeing the potential that they have, what do you think we're going to say about Ran Carthon in about 3 or 4 years? Because they're going to be up for another contract in 3 or 4 years. That's why I'm asking that question. Now, if they re-sign him to a contract because they've been playing well, shouldn't we say that, hey, Ran Carthon didn't do all bad here?
Not all bad, but not up to the standard of draft, develop, retain. And so,
but actually, it would be a development. Yes, it would be a draft, develop, and retain, because you drafted these guys. He didn't stay long enough to develop them, but he was the guy that hopefully he was a part of drafting those guys. So you got to give him
It's sort of incomplete
exactly,
on the
absolutely.
develop and retain. It's still in progress.
Well,
right?
exactly.
Okay, but we have to look at the individual that we're lumping everyone in. Skoronski can get better over a season, but is he the number 7 pick worthy?
11. He was 11.
11, not
Or
7,
11, excuse me.
11.
Sorry, yeah. So when we think about where you draft a guard,
See, we could have a show on that question because I still say that it's not perfect, but if he ends up being a really, really good guard for a long time, that's still a win, even though it's not ideal, right? But the draft usually is not ideal, right?
But it's how we view. So it's what you use that pick for and where you normally get that position for a guy who can be a win. Again, I'm not saying it's not it's a loss, but does it live up to what the expectation is for a pick that you're using in the top 15? I think you guys get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spears can be a great player for this offense and a great role piece that can be a true grinder and a number 1 back. When he got the opportunity, he showed it. Then he gets hurt. So while the production's there, he's not available to truly go all in there. Again, I'm not trying to knock the guys. They were drafted where they were drafted. Macy pointed out it's not their fault. But you mentioned Carthon and how we view things. I certainly say, we could look back on it and say it's going to be solid if they retain a bunch of these draft picks. And there's a lot of reasons to like what we saw this most recent year with some of these guys. But I also say it's exactly what they were saying wasn't happening with John Robinson. And it's also saying what they've already made up their mind on with Rand Carthon when based on the statements from the team. And I go back to draft, develop, retain. It sounds like common sense, but the fact that that's the mantra, and we also it's common sense that hasn't been happening. So they're saying that wasn't good enough, despite anything promising based on the position of T'Vondre Sweat or drafting the guard where they did.
All right, Hud, as we let you go, of the 4 games this weekend, give me the one you're most sure what you think is going to happen.
That's well, I think the Chiefs are going to win with the last possession. I'm most sure about that.
Okay, that's kind of how they roll, right?
They're an 8.5-point favorite. I don't know how much you guys talk lines, but the fact is they were a 3.5-point favorite when these 2 teams met back in Week 16. I don't think they covered that, Willie. And I sound like the old director here, but the Chiefs haven't lost at Arrowhead since Christmas Day of 2023. But here comes C.J. Stroud. He's a big game player, and I think it's going to be a tight game that people aren't expecting. I cannot wait for Baltimore and Buffalo. Cannot wait for that weekend cap. That's going to be fantastic with the MVP showdown and how both teams are playing right now. That's going to be one of the marquee matchups that we've been waiting for.
Just to let you know, Hut, I am nominating you to take over for Mike Keith. So just so you know, if I had a say, you would be up there, number 1.
Mace, the fact that you say that on your birthday means a lot. It carries some weight. Look, I can't wait to talk with them about the opportunity. I spent 16
Tell me
seasons.
what would getting in a position like that mean, knowing you followed this team for the longest and you've watched Mike Keith and you've talked with him and everything else. What would that mean to you?
It would mean the world to me. Look, I spent 16 seasons with Titans Radio. My first season was in 2005. It was Pac-Man Jones's rookie year. And I went through the COVID season of 2020. And I miss it like crazy. I love my time there. And I've been gone now for 3 seasons, 4 years. There's no replacement for Mike Keith. He set the bar and then reset the bar each week. I was fortunate enough to have a front row seat, as you're mentioning, to the game day broadcast, either on the sideline or in the booth as the game day host, and calling games for the Titans and being back in the booth with Coach Mack and Amy Wells, Rhett Bryan, Brad Willis, Philip Noel. That would be something I would sign up for in a heartbeat. I loved every minute of it. Mike set the standard for Titans Radio. I would work to uphold that standard. I was a part of it, and I'd love to be a part of the Titans Radio team again. Look, you're right. I grew up with it. I remember washing my truck on Sunday afternoons after church, listening to the broadcast with Mike and Pat Ryan. And I was a freshman in high school then whenever they went to the Super Bowl. So yeah, that takes me back quite a ways. I love it. And I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. Well, good luck with that, Hut. And in the meantime, we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have the best.
All right. Jonathan Hutton, Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow with his weekly appearance. Stay tuned. We got to catch up here. That was a good long segment. We'll kind of go through. We don't have to reveal our picks yet, but let's set the table for our thought process on the 4 games this weekend. And we'll make it official, take it to the bank. And we are what? T-minus 27 minutes or 26 minutes and change for D Mace's wish that the Titans will reveal their general manager before the end of the show today. All right. We're back on DVD as we come down the home stretch this weekend. We got Stillman and Company coming up at 2:00. Stay tuned.
Happy Friday and happy birthday to myself. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a goal or a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to come up disappointed. All right, but at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and no one else. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mays, Fingen, and Donick coming down the stretch here on this Friday. Big sports weekend coming. You've got Vanderbilt hosting Tennessee at Memorial Gym tomorrow afternoon. That is going to be a lot of fun. It's packed. They've already announced it's sold out. It is going to be heated. You got the underdog Commodores with a lot of hope under their new coach. They will be underdogs for sure. Tennessee, again, a really good top 10 team. That's even being conservative. I mean, they may be top 5, Final 4 contender. That's going to be spicy tomorrow. Can Vanderbilt hang? You've got the Predators and the Wild. The former head coach, John Hines, against Andrew Burnett, who spent a ton of time in his career with Minnesota. There's a lot of cross-pollination, if you will, between those two franchises. And you had on New Year's Eve an unfortunate incident in my mind. Zach LaRue was suspended for 3 games for a slew foot. I think the Predators would argue, hey, it wasn't intentional, it wasn't malicious, but the Wild have a different perspective on that, so get ready for some spiciness in that game as well. But, of course, at center stage will be the divisional playoffs in the NFL. 4 big games. So, D-Mace, let's set the stage. Give me your biggest thing that you're watching for in these 4 games. Let's start with the Commanders taking on the Lions. So what stands out to you? What's the key?
I think the key for the Lions is to do what they did against the Minnesota Vikings. Everybody saw that game. And I think prior to the game, it was how are the Lions with their depleted defense going to stop that high-powered Minnesota team? And what did Aaron Glenn and his defense do? They played man-to-man outside, and they were physical with them. So I think, do you employ that against Jaden Daniels? I'm not sure you can go to strictly man-to-man route because Jaden Daniels' ability to get outside the pocket and throw the football. So to me, the key is to keep everything in front of them. Force Jaden Daniels to be accurate. Force him to move the ball methodically down the field. That's the thing about rookie quarterbacks and in the playoffs is can they sustain drives, in the playoffs? That's hard to do, especially for a rookie quarterback. Listen, he did a good job last week. They were able to advance to the next round. Can the rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels do it once again? The Titans have to the Lions have to make sure that they make it hard. They make Washington earn every point that they get. They can't, go out there and just blitz this young man play after play because he's a good quarterback versus the blitz. So you got to make him work to get the ball down the field. I think first and foremost, you got to do that on defense. And then on offense, I think you got to establish a run. You have to. As good as your passing game is, Gibbs makes your passing game truly goes because his ability to run the football between the tackles as well as being a viable back, more than viable back outside of the backfield catching football.
He can catch it.
Exactly. So you got to get him in the game, allow him to dictate, what you're doing, because if they can't stop him, meaning Washington, it's going to be hard pressed for them to stop their passing game.
My thing is, I'm curious to watch the Lions defense. I was really impressed down the stretch when they lost Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm. They lost their backers.
They had a number of guys. That was the narrative for a while. Hey, the Lions are really beat up. I don't know if they can get it done defensively. And there were a few weeks it seemed like they had to outgun everybody, but they figured some stuff out. And so I'm watching them in this game. I want to see how they defend Jaden Daniels for sure. But the Lions offense, it looks like it's going to be really tough to stop unless they just have a bad day and turn it over 3 or 4 times. All right, the next biggest favorite is the Chiefs. 8-point favorite at home at Arrowhead tomorrow afternoon against the Texans. We talked about this last hour, but for people that are tuned in right now, what kind of chance do you give the Texans? What's the key for them?
I think the Texans have a legitimate chance. Listen, This isn't the same Kansas City Chiefs team. I understand they went 15-2, but that was a hard fought 15 games for them. And a lot of times it was something their defense was able to do, not necessarily their offense. And they've been off for 21 days. Houston looked a lot better, starting with the Titans game, the end of the game, into the season, and into their playoff game. They looked like a damn good playoff team last week. I know the quarterback started off a little slow, but picked things up, and they were able to sort of, they had control of that game. I believe they had control of that game from the start. So, to me, because Kansas City has had 21 days off, I think Houston, they need to take advantage of that the first half of the game. Because if they don't take advantage of the first half of the game, I can't see them then, coming out the second half and beating the Kansas City Chiefs team. I think Kansas City, if you don't get them in the first half, they're going to be ready to go in the second half.
I remember 2008. This was a year you'll remember because you were on the Ravens and you guys beat the Titans as the number 1 seed. But the Titans locked up the 1 seed with a emotional, dramatic win against the Steelers at home. That was the game, just to jar your memory, if you can go back this far. Keith Bullock and a couple of teammates were waving the terrible towels at the Steeler fans that were there.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of stomped on them and things like that. That didn't go over very well.
They don't like that, apparently.
They didn't really like that, but it was a big moment for the Titans. They were the 1 seed, kind of overachieved with Kerry Collins as the quarterback. They had the smash and dash. It was a rookie Chris Johnson and Lindell White, really good tandem backfield. A lot of things fell in place. Great defense, Albert Haynesworth. But what they did, and I'll always remember this, they did what the Chiefs did. They sat everybody, and they mailed it in their last game. Didn't even try to win, and they got railroaded like the Chiefs did. Like, that was a painful broadcast to watch. And I stopped watching after a while. That Broncos had to win to get in.
Yeah.
The Chiefs sat everybody, which is fine. But like you said, the rust is the question. So you've taken that week off, then you take a bye week, and now you got to rev it back up. Now the Chiefs, I have more faith in because they win every year. They figure it out. I can't imagine they're going to lay an egg.
And that's why I say Houston needs
but
to
they
get
might
them
be
in
a
the
little
first
rusty.
half.
Yeah, they might be a little rusty early. I buy that. The Titans, I don't think were able to turn it back on, and they looked very rusty. They fumbled a bunch of times in the red zone against your Ravens team and lost a very close game. So I've always been wary of too much rest. Sometimes when you rest everybody in the last game and then get the bye. So we'll see how that plays out. Now let's
you don't want a repeat of what 5-6 years ago, probably a little bit longer than that, when you were up 30-something to nothing to Kansas City, meaning Houston, or was it 20-something to nothing, and they end up coming back and winning the game. You don't want that to happen.
I remember that one well.
Because they got out fast on them, and then Kansas City
had in your
out.
mind for a moment,
Yeah.
hey, maybe the Texans will beat the Chiefs and the Titans will play the Texans in the championship game and not have to go to Arrowhead. That didn't happen. All right, when we come back, it'll be time to take it to the bank. We did not hit the Rams-Eagles game, but maybe we'll make a pick on that one. We shall see. Stay tuned to DVD. It's coming up next. It is time for Take It to the Bank here on 102.5 The Game. This is D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick. Adam Vingen absent, but he has dutifully given his picks to our commissioner, David Janes. It is 1:49 p.m., T-minus 8 minutes away from the cutoff. The Titans still have yet to name their general manager. That was one of last week's picks by one Derek Mason, the birthday boy. So, David, you have the official time ticking down.
I do.
Okay.
It's a big old sign right here, and it says D-Mace is going to get the point.
What if it comes out breaking news?
Here we go with the hypotheticals again.
The Titans
lobbying for extra points.
The Titans are in serious talks with Sullivan to be their next GM.
It hasn't been announced.
No, what if they
just
say
a serious talk?
They are working on a contract, a 3-year, 4-year contract.
It's not official. It's not official.
Even if they say they're working on it.
Nice try.
Titans, get on your business. Let's go. Let's go.
Right. David, what do we have from last week?
All right, boys. So I'm going to let's see. I just had to write these down real quick. So Adam said he had the Steelers to cover. That did not happen. He said Commanders over the Bucks. That did happen. The Commanders did beat the Bucks. It was a great game, one of the best games out there. He said Bills -8. That did happen. And he said the Packers to cover 4.5. That, unfortunately, sorry, Robbie Stanley, that did not happen at all. That was not a good game for him. Now, Derek, you said Baltimore would cover. That did happen. I was really surprised about that one. I didn't think we were going to cover the 9.5. But you also said Derrick Henry over 100 yards. Willie, I hate to say yours didn't hit.
I said
Willie's,
under 100 yards.
You said under. Yeah, slightly under.
He
went slightly over 100 yards.
I would say more than slightly.
Yeah, more than slightly.
What did he have, 186?
Yeah, 186. He was slightly under 200 yards.
Exactly.
Teach me to bet against the king.
And you said Lamar Jackson would throw or rush for a touchdown. He did throw for a touchdown. He threw for 2.
There we go.
And Willie, your other picks were Bills -9. That did happen. You said Steelers and the points. That did not happen. You said Chargers +3.
Jeez.
And then you threw
everything was fine early.
Yeah, everything was fine.
I left my house to go to to Smashville. Took my road to Smashville. Chargers up 6-0. Looking good. All right. Got there. Got ready for the game. Got all my notes together. And I turned to our statistician. I said, "Hey, what's the score of the game?" He said 32-12. What? It's like,
did you say 32-12?
32-12.
32-12.
Wow.
What happened?
And yeah,
the Chargers chargered.
Yep,
pretty much so.
Sounds about right. And that was going to be all your picks, but then you said
I slipped in the Henry thing.
So
I went 1 for 4 instead of 1 for 3.
Exactly.
That should be negative, shouldn't it?
No.
No. Now I said Ravens would win. I said Houston would win. I hate to do that to you, Willie, but I don't really hate it that much because I got the points. I also said Allen +3 touchdowns. He only got 2, and Bateman would get 2 touchdowns. He only got 1. So D-Mace, you had the lead with 107. Adam has 98. Willie, you have 87, and I have 75.
Ooh, I'm in the lead, baby. I'm in the lead. So when is the competition officially over?
I believe at the end of the Final Four is what we usually say. At the end of the Final Four.
That's fine. Let's do that. Yeah.
All right. So.
All right, D-Mace, you go first. D-Mace, you go first.
Oh man, let me go first then. All right. Give me Derrick Henry will rush over 100. Lamar will rush over 60. That's 2, right? And what? Lamar.
No, that's 3.
Yeah, you're right. That is 3.
If you're counting your
Oh, I didn't hear that part.
Pick.
Yeah,
yeah. So that's 3. So I got one
Lamar
more.
and Derek are 2 different ones.
Yeah, Lamar and Derek are 2 different ones.
Clearly, they're 2 different people.
This is why we got to pay attention here because
the Lions will.
Oh, Willie, I have the extra subsets where he ends up with like 7 picks. He's like, I
trusted
4,
you,
but
Willie.
it was part A, part B with all these. He gets extra points.
Damn, y'all. now.
Tried
Gosh.
to slip it in there on his birthday. Hey, we're like, hey, it's T-Mace's birthday. See,
All
he's
right.
still up to stuff.
And I'm going to, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go outside of the football. I got my 3 for football, and I'm picking the Preds. When do they play?
They got the Minnesota Wild.
Yes.
Saturday night.
Saturday night. Give me the Preds. Win.
You're liking what you see there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, Willie,
I
let's
hope
go.
you're right. All right. This is tough. I don't really have I had a strong feeling last week about my picks, and I went 1 for 4. I don't have a strong. I'm just going to hope
it may turn around because you don't have a strong.
I think the Chiefs are okay on the rust. And the whole thing about they always walk the tightrope. They play so many close games, but I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna take the Chiefs minus the 8. I think it'll take the Lions a while to rev it up, but I feel like their explosiveness will win the day, and they will pull away late. I will take the Lions minus the 9.5. The Rams are in that category of sneaky good. I haven't really watched them much. I'm like, they're not that good, right? And then they just continue to play impressively. They know how to stay close. I'll take them in the points, plus 6.5 against the Eagles. And the last one is the toughest one. This game I can see going so many different ways. I am going to learn my lesson and just not pick against Derrick Henry because I got burned last week. Today, I'll go the other way. I'll take the Ravens plus the 1.5.
All right, I'll go quickly. So Adam said Chiefs minus 8. So the Chiefs will beat the Texans. He said Commanders would lose but cover against the Lions. He said Derrick Henry will rush for at least 100 yards. Rams defeat the Eagles. Now, for me, it is Lamar Jackson for 2 touchdowns. Keaton Mitchell, no one is talking about him. He will have at least 60 yards rushing. I think Houston will cover against the Chiefs. And I think CJ Stroud will have at least 3 touchdowns. Take that.
Wow. Ooh. Okay, David James has spoken.
All right.
We have passed. Or no, we still have 1 minute left.
Yes, they got 1 minute
Teammates
left.
are probably not going to get those points. So we have to say goodbye. Stillman and Company ready to rock and roll on this Friday afternoon. Jared is, I'm sure, very excited to announce who the Titans' new GM is going to be when it's announced in the next 30 seconds. But everybody have a great weekend. I'll see you in Smashville tomorrow night. Good luck to the Commodores at Memorial Gym. That's going to be a fun game. D-Mace, I'll see you on Monday.
Absolutely. Breaking news. Sam Darnold is expected to be over $30 million per year. Damn it. Thought it was breaking news for the Titans. Hey, listen, have a wonderful, blessed Friday. Is my birthday. So thank everyone for the birthday wishes that called in, that texted in. Thank you. I appreciate it. But be safe. Be with your people. Love on your people. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.